So when you think of video games, you pretty much think of this.
Wolowitz needs a strike if he has any hopes of catching up with Sheldon Cooper, who is dominating in the 9th frame with a career best 68. Hey guys! That doesn't count! Do-over! Do-over!
There are no do-overs in Wii Bowling. Where were you this more important than Wii Bowling Night?
Actually, I was...
It's a rhetorical question. There is nothing more important than Wii Bowling Night.
Historically, video games have been predominantly known to be for guys because of the amount of violence and fantasy violence they contain, while maintaining few representations of women or lack thereof. In a study conducted by Krua, Mark, and Sung-Yeon Park, they said that both men and women perceive that young women play video games far less frequently than young men, and also consider themselves less influenced by the unrealistic images than others. In addition, women, in comparison to men, perceive the video game images to have stronger influence on others. However, with more different types of video games being produced, it was no surprise to find out that women are investing more in games. And not just like easy games, but also the strategy and mystery games as well. Game companies are, for the first time, looking at the needs and wants of female players of all ages. In an article released by MSNBC.com, they reported that slightly more women, about 60%, than men, 40%, reported playing computers and online games on college campuses. Women prefer computer games over violent video games played on consoles, partly because they don't usually require the player to choose a character. Games like Tetris are popular among women because gender isn't an issue. This surge in female players has many women looking for equal representation, where the only representation are characters who are docile, scantily clad heroines, or none at all. Women are represented as a small-waisted, big-breasted, who really are unrealistic. The Proteus effect proposed by Yi and Bailenson suggested that embodiment may lead to shifts in self-perception, both online, offline, based on the avatar's feature or behaviors. Participants who use sexualized avatars internalize the avatar's appearance and self-objectified, reporting more body-related thoughts than those wearing non-sexualized avatars. Participants who saw their own faces, particularly on sexualized avatars, expressed more rape myths acceptance than those in other conditions. One of the theories I had over the little or lack of female participation in video games was because of the violence in many of these video games slowly started containing. Some women tend not to want to participate in violence, even if it's just imaginary. In a study conducted by Anderson and Murphy concerning the short-term impact of exposure to violent video games on young women, a population that had received relatively little attention in this research literature resulted in a brief exposure to a violent video game increased aggressive behavior. Additionally, other results suggested that the violent video game's effect on aggression might be greater when the game players control a same-sex violent game. Given that some of the world's greatest and most inventive video game developers and designers are Japanese, it's no surprise to find out that traditionally video games have been predominantly male-dominated. One can't help but notice how games went from Pong to Mortal Kombat to Grand Theft Auto. As the violence in video games grew, boys became desensitized to violence, while making girls more sensitive to the violence. Culturally, women are portrayed as submissive and weak, while the men were represented as masculine leaders. And in many Asian cultures, which mirror on many of today's video games. If you look at the game Silent Hill 2, created by Konami, the protagonist James has to kill his wife in order to win the game. Kirkland points out that such portions in the game may be perceived as a video game misogyny, which feature a male protagonist killing creatures of monstrous femininity or represented a perverted world defining the psychological interior of a tortured man consumed by bitterness, resentment, and the conflicting feelings of the love and hatred towards a woman he had to kill at the end. In the class, we learned that culturally women were never really allowed to participate in any leisure activities until society deemed it respectable to join as spectators. Basically, they became the modern-day cheerleaders at a football game. And much of it had to do with the idea that biologically women were too weak and fragile to participate, unlike our muscular men, and that only women were allowed to observe the game because it was not considered proper for men to see women sweating from vigorous efforts. Basically, society rules. I didn't participate in the activity beforehand due to the lack of physical activity. But it's good to know that many of these video game companies are reaching out with these physically active games so that they can reach both men and women. One of the biggest assumptions that I found while researching was that women don't play AAA games. AAA game titles are generally considered high-quality games made by large studios with big budgets. There's a potential fear that if women are admitted as gamers, there's yet more and more potential that these core gaming experiences will forever change. If they did, then women would have a say as to what content these major studios would have to place in their games, which shakes the pillars of the gaming world.
That's why girls shouldn't play video games.
I would definitely participate in an activity like this again. While I was participating, I saw myself get clearly frustrated and slightly aggressive.
This is stupid.
It was a great experience and it felt good to get angry and release the tension.
Take two. No, wait. Do over. Get down before they see you. Oh no, you won! No! Oh my God, you won! No! You won! Oh!
Thank you so much for playing my game.